say again. Let me interrupt.
Yeah, so I slacked and didn't turn on the recording. So anybody listening to this, you missed all the important stuff.
We're done, right? Meeting
Yeah,
adjourned.
that's right.
Done.
Nice.
Meeting
Thanks
adjourned.
so
We're out.
much, guys. Best meeting ever.
Perfect.
And for these
See you
reasons,
next Friday.
I'm out. Yeah. So we started this conversation around what this call is. We're inviting Wes and Will to come hang out with us here today. Wes and Will, for those of you who don't know them, are employees of Fifth Wall Insurance, and they are an insurance company, an insurance broker. Am I saying that
broker,
right?
Distributor.
Who specializes in cybersecurity insurance. So they are, in my mind, some of the leading experts in the space today around this topic. We brought them here because based on last week's topic, and if you listen to last week's recording, you'll hear us talk about it. We were talking about new features and new bells and whistles, and somehow we divulged into the concept of what you should and shouldn't be able to say to a customer around cybersecurity. So these calls are always kind of open mic. You notice we're not on a Zoom or on a webinar. We're just on a Zoom. So everybody feel free to, as normal, hop off of mute and have a conversation with these guys, because the goal really is for everyone to get their questions answered. But from a high level, well, first I'll let you and Will both introduce yourselves, and we'll kind of go from there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be as quick as possible. Wes Spencer. I was one of the co-founders at Perch Security, if you know Perch. So I've been around MSPs since 2016 and love them. I deeply, deeply believe in the mission of what MSPs do. You're the only solution for the SMB market. I'm a cybersecurity guy by trade and have come into Fifth Wall helping them in the cyber insurance journey. They know insurance like nobody else. But they're learning MSPs and they're learning what good cybersecurity looks like in the channel, and I'm helping build that. So that's who I am.
Awesome.
And I'm Will. I did not mean to wear the same color shirt as Wes, so that's just purely.
I thought it was the uniform. I actually Googled Fifth Wall. I'm like, they're blue and blue. What is up with the red shirts?
Rose.
Well, it seems to me that you guys are the Fifth Wall red shirts, and they're going to beam you down to the planet, and your odds
potentially
are at least 50-50. Yeah,
very potential. Yeah, I'm on the insurance side. So Wes and I work together, and I've been, I was in insurance for a while doing the property and casualty life, but I'm a huge nerd by choice, and that. Getting into the cybersecurity world is where I wanted to be. So when I started with Fifth Wall about a year ago, and have just been studying. I study cyber insurance policies for fun, if that helps. So learning all the language of cyber insurance policies, because the traditional insurance agent doesn't understand all those coverages because they've been doing everything else. So that's what we specialize in, and that's kind of what I have built my work on. So yeah, it's great.
And I would encourage you guys, I just put both of their LinkedIn's in the chat. Follow these two guys. If nothing else, they'll make you smarter, and will make you laugh at his corny videos. So
there you go.
Yeah. So
I mean, who doesn't want to follow someone that reads insurance policies for fun?
Well, I want to follow him because he's making fun of Lord of the Rings in his insurance videos. So like, we can't take insurance too seriously. It'll be the death of us all. So if you don't want to sit in the corner and cry about it, let's find something to laugh about at least.
Insurance can be fun too.
Yeah, I agree to disagree, but okay.
It can be funny.
So can we start with kind of setting up the bigger conversation? And I'm sure this will lead into questions from some of the MSPs that are here. Are there some basic ground rules around things that are okay to talk about with our customer as a non-licensed agent, right? Or as a non-licensed insurance agent? That's all one thing, right? As an IT guy, not an insurance guy, are there some guidelines around what I can talk about, what I can't talk about? And what do those look like?
Yeah,
How do I stay out of trouble?
I think it's pretty simple when you think of like what you're allowed to give. If you were to kind of break it down to what you're allowed to advise upon, right? You can't, like, where you want to be careful is diving into someone's policy and saying, hey, you're covered for this, right? I think that's probably the biggest no-no for someone who's not in the insurance agency industry, because then you're saying, hey, I am absolutely certain that you're covered for this. And now you've kind of staked the claim that if something were to happen now and they don't get coverage for that, then you're in trouble, right? They're coming after you. So it's really like, in any market where you're advising on something or you're providing some sort of coverage for something, you want to avoid making guarantees especially if you're not licensed. So really when it comes to that, and maybe Wes can speak to this a little more, it's not so much about what you can't say, because you don't want to give insurance advice. I mean, I think that's ultimately where your focus is. You're not giving advice on who you should go with, what company's better than other companies. It's all that kind of stuff. So anything that avoids insurance advice is good. But where I think the MSP plays a crucial role is the recognition that, like, just saying, hey, you know what? I've noticed that cyber insurance is getting more and more difficult to get. But from my insurance partners, what I'm seeing is that the better your security posture is up front, the easier it is to obtain. There's no guarantee in that conversation. There's no, hey, I can get you cyber insurance. All it is based on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, cyber insurance is easier to get and cheaper to get if you have good controls.
Couple things I'll add to that. So I would just, that, like, to me, so I'm not licensed either. So I'm just like you. There are things that I'm not allowed to say.
That's why we wanted to get you in here, because you're a little nerdy like us.
Yeah.
And yet, right, you're in the same boat.
Yeah. And exactly. So I like things like, hey, this policy, it looks like these limits are good for you. That's a no-no. Things like, well, I really think you need 3 million. That's a no-no. Things like, hey, these two options you have here, I think you should choose this one. That's a no-no. If you stay away from questions like that, you're largely okay. Here's the stuff well within your wheelhouse. Hey, that question right there from this application looks really vague. We should probably go back and get clarity from them on that. Totally fine to say that. Hey, I can tell you this things that says you have to have MFA rolled out everywhere. I can tell you you're not doing that. It's okay for you to say. You're an expert in IT, right? So it's okay for you to interpret the qualifications that they're asking for. Totally fine. I've seen some MSPs be like, well, I'm afraid to say they don't have managed EDR and they're asking for it because I'm not the insurance. No, you're talking about what you're qualified for. That's totally fine. So to me, it's really kind of simple. I would just really just steer away from guide. Really, it's this. Don't guide them into selecting any insurance product. Stay agnostic.
So
if you do that, you'll be okay.
That kind of leads up to, though, part of the conversation that got us literally to calling you guys to have you on here, because one of the things that came up yesterday or last week was that somebody said, I asked my clients to review the policy and I kind of sit down with them and make sure that their policy has some basic coverages in them around ransomware and some of those other things. And that got me a little nervous. It got me thinking, I feel like at that point we might be construed as giving insurance advice, because especially if we're looking at two policies side by side and going, well, that one has that, this one doesn't, kind of leaning towards that's a better policy. Doesn't sound like stuff I should say. Where do you draw the line, and how do you know, as an MSP, we want to talk to our customers about insurance, right? We want to make sure that they're consulting an agent and buying good insurance to protect them. But can we even look through the policy and say, hey, I don't see any mention of, there's carve outs here for nation state attacks, there's these kind of things, or are these things we should be steering clear of?
Yeah. Few things that here, right? Like, know when you want to have a conversation with somebody that understands and is someone that's licensed and has the capability of like answering those questions. Putting my thoughts together. It's okay. Here's a good example. Tim Golden was asking in chat about sublimits, right? We'll talk about sublimits if you want to hear more about it, but let me just use that as an example without you may not knowing what it is. It's okay for you to look at that policy and see $100,000 in sublimits for social engineering and saying, you know what, across the board, generally speaking, I know 100,000 is not enough. We should probably talk to your agent or carrier, whoever, and like address that. It's okay to say things like that. And that's typically my out. Anytime Will doesn't have to worry about that because he's licensed. He can say whatever he wants. But for me, what I'll do is many times when I jump into I can just tell something's not right, I'll just say things like, generally speaking, for clients kind of like you, and then I make a statement. That way I'm not saying something specifically like that, but it's okay. The deeper you go into insurance, the more you're going to be able to understand some of those kinds of things where you'll be able to spot some things that are definitely no good. we work with a ton of MSPs, and some of them are getting really good at like eyeballing a policy and seeing some of the big things that exist there that they should point out. It's okay to have those red flags.
To be
Just try
clear,
yeah.
part of the difference between you and Will is that Will has to carry his own insurance so that if he screws up, he's got some coverage, right?
You got insurance for insurance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kurt's got his
Kirk's
hand,
being-
Kirk's
yeah,
got his hand up.
Kirk's
Yeah.
being nice and raising his hand, so we'll let him.
I like that, referring them back to their agent as well. too.
Yeah, and that's what my question is I work with a great agent that I'll say, hey, it looks like your cyber liability policy is coming up, and that is an assessment question that we ask or we put in our quarterly is, when is it up for renewal? So that way we can take a look at it a quarter in advance and say, hey, I know you've got such and such an agent. Would you mind if I had a broker that I trust go through it, bring up any concerns? And that way you can raise those concerns with your broker, or if you want to shop around, you can talk to the broker that I use and see as of the results. What I do tend to say, and this is the question that I have, is I tend to say if you have a cyber liability policy attached as a rider, it's basically garbage. That you need its own policy, but I'm not sure if that's stepping over a line or not. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And Tim, to answer your question, I mean, if you want to go get licensed, you can, but it's not a fun process. But ultimately, yeah, you can say things like, hey, in my experience, I've seen this, I've observed this. It's just it's pretty, I just think it's pretty common sense to think, okay, if at any point I'm telling someone this is what you have, or you're looking, so Alex, to answer your question, right? If you were looking and you saw, oh, this doesn't have nation state coverage, there's literally a difference between saying I didn't see it on here, or you don't, or you do have it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm unsure about this, so you might want to check with your agent about it. Like we said, referring to the agent versus basically versus saying this is what you have and don't have. I mean, I think that's just the basics of it.
Okay.
I would be cautious about referring my agent to the customer, because if something happens and they don't like the way it turned out, then it reflects on you.
Well, it does, but my counterpoint to that would be there are probably more bad cyber insurance agents than there are good ones, and so it might behoove you just to have, if you're not comfortable giving them one, maybe give them a couple to choose from. That, hey, here's like a few you can pick from. These guys don't suck, because back to Kirk's point about if it's on a rider, it's probably not the right insurance policy for you. Everyone who does business insurance has some sort of a rider they'll want to offer or can offer for something cyber related that probably has more carve outs than actual coverages. And we want to make sure that the person looking at it is qualified to have an opinion on it, which, I mean, Will, you speak insurance better than me. Is the average State Farm rep qualified to have an opinion on a good cyber policy?
Yeah, the way I would look at it is, a lot of times when you're talking,
he's not willing to say no.
I'll say
he doesn't want to throw his industry under the bus, but
no, I'm with you. I think I used to work in that specific field of like the property casualty life, and most of the people I worked with have been doing cyber, or not cyber, have been doing property and casualty insurance for 20-30 years. So now they're being asked to learn about cyber, and they're like, I don't want to take the time to learn about this. So when they see a rider added onto a policy, it's like, okay, this gives them something, right? They're thinking, all right, give them some coverage. But a lot of times those policies don't have first party coverage. So even if it's lawsuit protection, and that's about it. So a lot of times a company gets hit with a cyber breach, and if they really go down a lot with those riders, they might be out of business. So it's just being able to paint that picture.
Yeah. I'll add a couple things to that. So yeah, most agents, they just don't. You guys are exactly right. 9 times out of 10, what happens to us in these kind of situations is the agent's like, wait a second, You mean that there's another way for me to handle this crap without me having to understand like this nerd cyber language? Like they're intimidated by it. They don't understand it. That many of them don't understand like most of them can't fathom that a ransomware incident would cost over $1 million. They don't know this stuff.
But they're as intimidated by technology as our customers, right?
Yep. So just understand, like, yeah, some agents are great, but most agents are not so great. We'll even run into agents that are like, can we just give you our entire book? Because all we do is cyber. We don't touch any other lines. And so that'll happen more times than not because they just don't want to mess with it. So yeah, just be aware of agents. You don't always just try to understand their depth and understanding of cyber. And if they can't communicate it, most of them be honest with you, right? They'll tell you, I don't know anything about this stuff. Yeah, that's where you want to look for other options.
Right. Chuck's got a question. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, we recently have working with a clinic, we did a security risk assessment, and I asked him if he had cyber insurance, and he didn't. So he reached out to his agent, and his agent just kind of told him, you don't need cyber insurance. I mean, how do you combat that? I just kind of laughed. That's not what we're seeing in the industry. He said, well, I don't need it. It's a waste.
Yeah, I think that's a good start to combating it. But yeah.
Can I just say, and when I first started up in the insurance industry, I went to a sales school, and I had the guy at the school was the happiest guy I've ever met in my life, and he always had a huge smile on his face. And he said, to sell insurance, you have to burn a house down and burn a business down, with a huge smile on his face. And it was kind of creepy, but at the same time, when you think about it, it's like an agent saying you don't need cyber insurance doesn't understand the exposure. The fact that every business today is almost more online than it is offline.
Yeah.
So it's like you telling me you're willing to protect your building, which most of your workers don't even come to anymore because they all work from home, but then you're not willing to protect your entire network where all your data is. So it's like you really start to paint these pictures for them, and that's where the agent can come in and really talk to them just about the risk. It's not to scare them, but it's to be real, paint the reality.
Right.
And you were talking about.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff. You're good.
You were talking about getting things in place to lower the policy. I know that we had talked to an agent we're trying to work with. If he had seen that, if we've got somebody that comes in and the application process says, yeah, we got this X, Y, and Z. Does that lower? And he says he hasn't really seen that, at least where we're at.
No, so he's correct on that. So here's the way that the fifth wall operates, which is different from an agent. An agent typically has access to 3 or 4 insurance companies directly, and then they have to go through people like us, wholesalers, to gain access to more insurance companies. But we're the largest cyber wholesaler in the country, so we have access to 40 different insurance companies directly. We can call them up on the phone, we can talk to their underwriters, all that kind of stuff. So right now, security controls are affecting eligibility for cyber insurance, not necessarily pricing, but the better carriers are offering better prices, but you need to have really good controls to be entertained by those carriers, if that makes any sense. So because of our access, we're able to save money. It's not, so agents aren't really seeing that because they don't have that access.
Or the specialized experience to spend all day just on cyber where they would run enough policies to see that, right? And I think that probably leads right into Stephen's question. Stephen, go ahead. I saw it in chat and I was headed that way, but we'll let you ask it.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. New to the group and nice to meet y'all. Really enjoying the conversation.
Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. So I have customers asking me, giving me the surveys that their cyber insurance agents are providing to them. And they're trying to fill these things out. And, they don't know what EDR is. They don't know what endpoint protection is. They don't know what managed incident responses are. I mean, they don't, SOCs and all these different things that, they don't know the terms. The insurance companies are making it seems very nebulous to position themselves in a place where they end up not having to pay the claim. And as the managed IT guy, I have to come in and go, you don't have that, you're getting this, you need this, sign here, and, and answering these things. And I'm, as I'm listening to this conversation evolve, I'm literally having heart palpitations, wondering if I am putting myself and my company at risk by answering these questions.
So great question. I'm actually addressing that at MSSP Alert on Tuesday, I think, of that's like what level. So there's a perceived risk of liability and there's a real level of liability, right? So like there's a couple pieces to this. I was talking, I don't know if any of you know Eric Tildes. He's a lawyer, awesome legal counsel. And we're doing this talk together. That's a big piece of the talk is where does the liability lie? And what Eric will tell you, and this is not legal advice, all the normal stuff, right? What Eric will tell you is if you have very clean terms of service with the client, and everything is correctly outlined on where that liability exists and your responsibilities in MSP and where your responsibility is delineated, then you're going to be okay on the insurance process, especially if you're not the one signing the dotted line at the application level. That's usually it. So don't sign for the client, right? Today, there's no requirements from carriers on applications for you to have to sign the application. I think there's a day coming where there will be a supplement that the provider must have some amount of like signing stuff, but at this point, there's no liability really that exists, provided you have very, very, very good legal overhead on your actual agreements, right?
To
And
clarify
provided that you're only giving advice.
To clarify that, you're expecting in the future to have some sort of attestation by the provider that says, I'm doing the things that the CEO thinks I'm doing. Is that kind of what you're thinking might happen?
I'm looking at the tea leaves here, and you're starting to see these ransomware supplements. You're starting to see questions come back to the carrier of, hey, the client has this, and this in place, but they don't have this and this in place. And the IT provider, they're starting to hear that these IT providers are more prevalent than they thought. And the IT providers are the ones that are producing the actual IT and security services. So yeah, I think the next evolution is they're going to want more visibility into what the IT provider's doing.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I don't know if they'll be requiring that though until they get some more clarity on the questions on these applications, because I think they are hearing the I hope they're hearing the feedback that those questions are extremely unclear. So it's almost like, how can you require someone to sign? I don't know. Just a thought.
So the questions is a great starting point for a different conversation, right? And Tim mentioned it already. If you're, and everybody here should already be a Lifecycle Insights partner. So if you go into the assessments category on Lifecycle Insights, so tabs on the left, grab the assessments tab, and go to manage assessment templates down here on the left. So I've selected assessments, manage assessment templates. The second one you'll come across, sorry, I've added one above it, but if you're down here in the downloads, the first one you'll come across in the templates that you can import into your stack are a 2022 Q2 cyber insurance preparation assessment powered by Fifth Wall. So in case you think you've heard Fifth Wall before, yeah, look above us. That we got two guys from there, and Dustin creeping around in the background. So there's 3 Fifth Wall folks in this room. We have a great partnership with them. We talk to them about this stuff. They're my go-to for answering hard questions about insurance. But if you look at this, they're working with more than 35 cyber carriers, more than 5 tech E&O providers. They've taken these crazy assessments from these questionnaires from 40 plus different providers and distilled it down to one set of questions that you can ask and answer for your customer. Okay. So the goal of this is for you at some point in the year, maybe a couple months before your customer gets one from their insurance provider, right? Let's find out when they're due for renewal and do this ahead of time. We can come back to them and have a conversation about, hey, we don't have some policy and procedure in place. We don't have something in place that we need to be worrying about. And we should do that before the insurance company comes poking at us, instead of, in a knee-jerk reaction, trying to do it in a hurry when the insurance company comes asking for it. So log into Lifecycle Insights, go grab this template, compare some of what's in here to what you're asking on your regular MSP risk assessments, your regular quarterly assessments and annual assessments. There's questions in here I had never even thought of, about obtaining licenses for multimedia and things like that. This doesn't take but a quick policy for your, in your organization, a quick guideline to them to help them understand what the risk is, because people don't know. They don't think about it. They've never been trained on, hey, if I download something off the internet, it actually belongs to somebody else and I can't just go reuse it. So, there's a lot of good guidance that can be gleaned from here. If you have questions about these questions, we can put you in touch with the right folks. You can reach out to Wes or Will. They'll help you kind of clarify exactly what's meant here, because some of these are a little nebulous. Although I think they've done a good job of bringing them back down to earth. So
yeah, and don't hate on us for some of those being stupid. We
inherited them that way. Yeah.
We're inheriting stupidance from our carriers.
That's a new word now.
I know, right? We have 40 of them that we deal with. All of them are stupid in their own way. It's like, when everyone gets together for Thanksgiving meals, you know how it goes. So keep in mind, folks, the carriers are not cyber smart. They really aren't. And so they ask questions that seem bizarre. They're asking the wrong questions in the wrong places and the right questions in the wrong ways. And they're not standardized themselves on things, and understand that like carrier A sees a lot of breaches over here. So they ask for questions around the things they've seen, but the carrier B over here does not see those things and are not asking those things. It is not a standardized ecosystem. They do not share information with one another. And so it's very knee jerk in our industry right now. That needs to be fixed. But yep, that's why you may see some of that crazy stuff in those. But the good thing about that is, if like that is sort of, we've normalized that process, right? So it's easy for MSPs to say one carrier or one app to rule all of them on the back end, because we got to make this simpler.
So, I like standing up on stage and throwing grenades at the other vendors in the room when I'm there, because it's just fun.
You don't.
But so the conversation we had at the last 7-figure event was, don't buy anything from any of these other vendors in the room. Buy my stuff, but don't buy their stuff until you're sure what problem it solves, right? And I think this is a good list of things that you should be able to go through this list and say, properly deployed, the solutions that I offer my customer can solve for a lot of this. Now, there's going to be things that you can't, where you've got to go work with the client to do a policy engagement, help them write a policy, help them write a procedure, do some of those things. But if you go through this list and there's a big gaping technology hole in your stack, it might be an idea that, or it might spark an idea that maybe there's still a problem that you haven't bought the right tool to solve for. I'd encourage all of you to look at the 365 stack, properly configured. It solves for a lot of this, probably more than most of us use it for. So, pay attention to the tools that you already own and how you might be able to deploy them better or different as well. Let's see. We got any other questions hanging out in here? People
got one
going.
Yeah, I got one. Oh, go ahead.
So I feel like EDR is the most recent example of, it wasn't on insurance policies one year, and it's like, hey, now it's there. Do you see any policies, any applications, anything like trending that's going to be kind of one of those optional, like we'd like you to have it, to you need it?
Yes, there are 5, and keep in mind, it's not the best 5, but there are 5 controls that we see are like you must be this tall to ride. And that it is EDR, and we prefer managed, but so far most carriers are, some just, do you have EDR? Some, do you have managed? Some, who the heck is it that you have? But EDR of some kind. I know this is stupid, but next generation antivirus, I hate the term, but they're requiring that, which oftentimes those are solved together with the right solution in place, or some small variants, right? Immutable backups, 3-2-1 strategy, all that stuff you're comfortable with. Managed, phishing, security awareness training and phishing is number 4. Then 5, MFA freaking everywhere. And if you don't have it everywhere, you got to disclose it. And some carriers are stupid on that. They're like, do you have MFA on your switches? And you're like, yo, that's not even a thing. Just disclose. If they ask for everywhere and they mention things like that, just disclose it. Where it's not, you'll be fine. Those are the 5 minimum requirements right now. There are more coming out that you'll need to have in place that, carriers are wising up to. Like, are you doing vulnerability management? Like, my gosh, like I saw a Corvus scan. I saw a client got rejected today. The Corvus scan that came back on their mail server had CVEs, 9.0 CVEs going back to 2014.
Well, the first problem was that they had a mail server.
Fair.
Let's be clear.
Super fair. Yeah, super fair.
Yeah.
But those are the 5 minimums, which are good because they're all well within your wheelhouse. Just know I'm not saying those are the bare minimums to be secure. And I'm not even saying that those are the right things. There need to be more than those things. But EDR, Andrew, popped into there because, see, here's the one thing carriers do know. They know more about breaches than the federal government, because they're the ones that pay it out and they're the ones that get access to the actual forensic data. And so when they're looking at this, they're seeing the controls in place and what would have helped. And they're seeing that's why things like EDR is so important, because a lot of these breaches that they pay out from, it's like the Uber breach that happened. It doesn't take like super sophisticated things to like stop some of this stuff, right? And so, yeah, that's where you see EDR kind of rose to the top so quickly, because they're looking at all these breaches and like, dang it, if the clients had that in place. And they also get to see the controls that are in place and not in place after they pay out for a breach. They're just sort of putting puzzle pieces together.
Well, but it's easier to look backwards at history than to look into a crystal ball, right? So, and that's what carriers are inherently good at. They have tables and tables and tables of actuary data that tell them how long I'm going to live and how much my life insurance should cost, right? They have no idea about cyber, and they're building those actuary tables and they're using history to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what the insurance business is. It's where it comes from. It's how it's built. It's just a thing. I love that those 5 things. So to cover those again: EDR, next generation antivirus, immutable backup, security awareness training. I'm sorry, next gen firewall,
no, next gen
antivirus.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is a silly one. Security awareness training and MFA everywhere. I will say this: I laughed out loud when we sat at Right of Boom, and somebody said from stage, and I don't remember who it was, he gave everybody an exercise to do, and all the techs just flipped open their laptops and started working. And he says, I noticed how few of you whipped out your MFA code to log into your laptop, right? And so all of this starts at home, right? Can your techs log into their laptop that they leave on their coffee table where their kids are, where their kids are within arm's length of it? Can they log into their laptops without MFA? Can they log into their tools without it? Eat your own dog food, guys. This is you are customer number 1. And I think that's important to say. Greg, you got a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, those top 5, do you expect the insurance industry to put a definition on what those things actually are?
Well,
industry wide, that's where I think the challenge is you have some carriers who are, like Wes said, Wes just says MFA everywhere, because at this point, some carriers, when it first started, I think so, just because when this first started, carriers were just saying, do you have MFA? And that's all it said on the apps. And now it's gotten a little more specific, saying on remote desktop or on email access or on admin access. So I suspect that most carriers will eventually catch up, and you'll see some consistency and specifics on what each of these controls mean. But on the flip side of that, and this is where we're starting to see the trends, is a lot of times people want to do only what's like minimally necessary to secure an insurance policy. And when you're in like to Alex's point before, when you're in a field where they have actuary tables across the board for years and years and years on end, that things aren't really changing in the industry, doing the bare minimum to get a policy is easier. But in the case of cyber, if they don't have all their controls in place, come next year, they're going to have to do this dance again, because who knows what carriers are going to be requiring in the next year.
Well, and the truth is, everybody's going to have to do this dance again next year anyway. Just the folks who have done it this year are going to be further along.
Yep.
So Michael, you've got a question?
Yeah, thanks. First time I'm here, and I'm really enjoying the program. 2 questions, actually. Number 1, I worked sequentially with several different agents and couldn't find one. Obviously, they don't know about cyber, but I couldn't find one that really cared to know. Is there something inherent in the either in the commission structure, or is this kind of like considered by an insurance guy the true coat that the guy tries to push you at the auto dealer, as opposed to where he makes his real money? Because there seemed not only a lack of knowledge, but a lack of motivation to get deeper into selling cyber to their corporate clients or to mine. That was the first question. I got one to follow up.
Will you take that one?
I was actually adjusting the lighting in my room, so I had to step away from my desk for a second.
It's all good.
The sun was literally blinding my eyes.
The question is sort of like why, because you're an agent as well, so you'll understand this. Why is it that agents seem to be apathetic to cyber? You know, like they don't seem to want to sell it. They don't seem to think it's a need. And Michael's question was sort of like, is it because they're not incentivized enough to like really want to drive for it? Like, why do we see that apathy?
I mean, I think it really is more built on the confusion surrounding it. The uncertainty, the unknowing, the partially, and being honest, partially the hassle of the security control stuff right now. I mean, if you're an agent who doesn't know anything about technology and now you're being asked about MFA and EDR and things like that, like it's a lot of hassle. And when you're thinking of an entire business policy, you're putting a lot of times with companies, agents are putting these huge commercial packages together, and the cyber is really just like a small piece of it. So I think sometimes it's like, okay, we could really do all the headache work that goes around this policy, but we're only getting a minimum commission from it at that point. So maybe there is some financial incentive behind it. But I think that coupled with the confusion and the hassle of the controls is probably a big part of it.
Okay. So does Fifth Wall, can they serve as a referral source to agents who actually do get it, who have the knowledge, who have a better understanding of the conversation that a cybersecurity knowledgeable agent would have with a prospect of a certain size? Would you guys be able to refer to someone that says, yeah, you know what? Because I've gone through 3 different agent/brokers and tried to work with them on behalf of clients of mine without any real success and without any comfort level that I felt good that they were advancing this process in a way that was professional and in the client's interest. Would you guys be capable of serving as a resource for referrals of these types of agents, or is that something that you don't get into?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. With trying not to be a sales pitch here, because I don't want to do that. But we are an agency as well, right? So you have agents and you have the distributors at our level. So we work with both agents and we work with both MSPs.
I thought you would just distribute, wholesales. Okay.
Yeah, we don't turn you into an agent, but we can sort of do all the work the agent does as well. So does that answer the question without me being too salesy?
No, that's fine. It kind of teed up your final spiel, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well,
okay. You're welcome.
I mean, the end of the day is, Michael, what you just said is what I see every single day, right? MSPs are like, I'm getting drug into this application process for my clients, and I need MSPs to, I mean, I need somebody that knows this stuff really well to help me to engage, to help to find the right policy for the client. I just need you to line it up for me. So make it happen. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Thanks.
Awesome. So there was some talk about just, what's going on in the insurance industry up to this point in the chat. Does anybody want to weigh into just kind of how this has gone for the insurance brokers for the last year or two, or last couple of years, just to give everybody kind of how we got here? And we probably should have started with that, but I understand my very limited understanding is that some insurance providers were even negative on cyber insurance, like they lost more money than they brought in for it. So, imagine if you sold managed services, our goal here is, 65-70% margin. Imagine if you were negative in your margin, you were actually losing money for every seat that you sold. I don't know, Wes, Will, I don't know if you guys want to expand on that, or if there's anything on that that you care to share, but there's probably a lot more history there than I'm familiar with.
Let me share an article with you guys from Wall Street Journal that pretty much encapsulates all this. They got the data from someone else. Yep. There's probably a better link than that horrible atrocity I just sent across, but I'm less than 24 hours away from a fever. My brain doesn't work straight. So I'll let you guys figure that out, or you just YOLO click it. I don't care.
There you go.
But yeah, what you're seeing is stupid loss ratios across the board. They've actually come down a little bit, which is good. We'll see. But I have reasons that I think that's happened. I think the reduction in loss ratios over the past quarter are not because insurance is doing better. It's because we're seeing less ransomware incidents right now. And there are many reasons on why we might see less ransomware incidents. We can talk about that later if you want. But it is coming down. But yeah, so what happened was they was like Oprah, right? Like you get insurance, you get insurance, you get insurance. I mean, if you had a name, a business name in fog and mirror, you got insurance. That was it. Yep. So you get what you pay for in that kind of thing. And unfortunately, insurance they're for profit. So they thought it was easy pickings. And then they took a huge wash with 60 to 100% loss ratios, completely emptied them out. And so then that's when you see that huge knee jerk from things like there are certain industries that are no longer covered. There are certain carriers that don't even do cyber anymore. You're seeing 4x increases on premium rates. You're seeing all of this knee jerk, knee jerk, knee jerk, knee jerk. That's why we're in this, what we call a hard market right now. Eventually this will settle down a little bit. We still need a couple more years. That's why you're seeing all the craziness, but It is starting to settle down. And you see companies like Beasley, for example. Did you know Beasley just shared out their last earnings, and their earnings went up double? And the reason it went up double is because they're like, we've seen so many cyber breaches. We just think we're going to charge double for the premiums, and it worked for them. And it's actually so yeah, that's what we're seeing right now. It's good. Rates are going up, costs are going up, which is why you got to charge more. But eventually we'll see it normalize a little bit more.
Oh, we got a report here that Kirk's agent sent him too, so that should be interesting.
I didn't know you can send a file through Zoom. That's cool.
Yeah, you can just drag and drop them now. That's fairly new.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh,
my Nigerian prince needs some help, so I'll post that.
I clicked it to save, and it wants to save it to System 32. That sounds great for default directory.
But it was what you reiterated is overall the cyber incidents are down. Small businesses became bigger targets. Phishing triggers this majority of cyber incidents. Ransomware declines as demands go unpaid. So it was an interesting report, but I put it there.
That is nice. And that's, guys, this is pretty. Like you could put something like this in front of your customer to help explain it, right? The why we need these things. Does Fifth Wall have some customer facing content to help MSPs broach this subject?
We do. So, I mean, we partner with MSPs, so we have a, I guess it's like a web page. It's not, some people call it a portal. It's not, it's literally a page with some different documents and different, there's like a slide deck on there. There's one of my favorite ones on there. I call it the cyber coverage cheat sheet, but I guess it's more specifically just like an example form where it lists and works through all the different coverages you'll see on a comprehensive cyber policy, and then gives definitions in plain language and real world examples of how those would apply. And like things like that are really helpful because people then see, oh, I have this little tiny add-on policy that doesn't cover any of these things, but these things all seem like pretty real scenarios I can hit. So things like that, their MSPs can just use at their discretion.
That's awesome. I like that a lot. Steven, you got another question? But you're muted.
Yeah, it takes a second there when you're on cell phone to get that sucker on.
No worries. No worries.
So I
lost it.
Okay, so I have the client that I was telling you that I was speaking about earlier. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. They are with Beasley's, and that's
oh, you're breaking up, Steven. Go stand by a window and like stand on one foot, and yeah. You're gonna have to get to where you got a little better coverage. Yeah, tree pose. You always get better cell service if you hold it like this.
Proprietary about it, but if somebody is interested or wants it, I can certainly send that off.
If you can hear us, we lost the first half of that. So if you have enough coverage to start that over, go for it. And if not, I'll
sure.
That's okay.
No, the bottom line is I have the questionnaire that Beasley sent my customer that I'm happy to share if that helps or is helpful to anyone to build a strategy.
And Wes, you guys interact with Beasley as well, right? Yeah. So all the Beasley questions are actually summarized, translated to English, and included in that fifth wall assessment that's in Lifecycle.
Yes, Beasley is my favorite, actually. I get asked all the time, do you have like a sample one? And I share the Beasley one pretty much every time because theirs is probably the best, cleanest. Like I really like theirs a lot. It's the one that you feel like there's a carrier that knows a little bit about cyber.
Beasley has kind of been at least for the past couple of years, the gold standard when it comes to a cyber app, just because it does really break down a lot of things. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? We're kind of running down on time here.
On that 24/7 on the lifecycle insights, cybersecurity, insurance, it said, how many employees do you have on 24/7 security? So I guess you just reach out to your SOC and try and get a count that way.
Yeah. Are the insurance companies asking that question specific? How are you seeing that question asked? Because I know this is a summary
it was in your assessment.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to ask Wes and Will to kind of talk through that. Like, how are you seeing that ask, and how would you handle that? Right? I don't know how many people Sophos has on their SOC. What's the right answer to that question?
I mean, some are, and it'll typically be like does your client have EDR? And they'll just ask that question. And then they might ask what EDR provider do they use? And then they'll also follow up with another question. If yes, then is it 24/7 or how long is it managed? Things like that.
Keep in mind too that a lot of the questions that are asked are data gathering questions. They're not actually decisioning questions. And this is really aggravating to me because you sometimes look at the application, you feel like you have to answer everything 100% and you don't. So those are questions like the size, they're still trying to get their hands around like some of that. And when I'm elected dictator, like applications are going to be forced to tell you this is a decision criteria question, like yes or no, pass, fail, and this is data gathering, right? But a lot of the questions and applications are data gathering at this point.
Okay, yeah, like it just says like third-party risk management, is your network secured and monitored 24/7, and then it says how many dedicated IT security personnel are on the network security team.
So I think that's an important distinction though, Wes. You said something that I want to expand on, which is today they're collecting data, but not necessarily using it to qualify or disqualify you, or to a bigger point, they're not using it to justify your rate, right? So is this literally just the data that's going to feed into the actuary tables as we go along? When one of our customers gets breached, they're going to go look at it and say, well, Dave checked the box that they have EDR, but it's monitored by 2 people, and that causes a problem for me.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're using it for. Yep. And if someone really nerdy like Joe Cyber, if you guys follow him on Reddit, like it'd be cool for them to go take the past 5 years of the major carriers and look at the iterations in their applications, because you can absolutely see the breach sources and the mitigating factors that could have been in play to correct those. Yeah. And again, some of them sound stupid. Like you guys look at those and you're like, I could have told you that, but these are insurance carriers. They're not the smartest people in the world, especially when it comes to cyber. I'll tell you that.
I'd take offense to that, Will. I would be bothered by that statement. So guys, it's 3:53. I think we should kind of wrap this up. I don't want to leave anybody with an insurance conversation hangover on a Friday afternoon. But with that, I want to let Wes and Will both kind of just take 2 minutes and say their piece, wrap things up. And feel free, like this is a good audience. These are great folks. Our Lifecycle Insights partners are fantastic. You can throw a little sales pitch in there if you need to. We feel comfortable. I'll say it for them because they won't say it. I feel comfortable recommending these people to you. They're fantastic. Wes and I have been friends longer than he's been involved in Fifth Wall. He's who I go to when I have compliance questions and want to break brains and dive into vocabulary words that we don't understand and things like that. I've met Will through Fifth Wall, like them both. I have a lot of faith in the company that they're building. So if you need a reference from me, this is who I would go talk to today about insurance. But with that, I'll let you guys kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. We love MSPs, and that's what we do. We work alongside MSPs. And one of the things I think you'll like about it is we have no requirements, minimums, nothing, right? So if you ever just want to ask us a question, can you take a look at this policy and tell me what you see in this? Answer is always yes. Like, So just know the way that works is a super friendly MSP way in that sense. So we're always here for you if you have questions. We love jumping on a call between you and the clients. And our goal is to help the client find a cheaper, better policy. And usually with that that's required is you must be this tall to ride. So forcing those minimums that are in place. And that's where MSPs fall in love with the process, right? Because I get to be the bad guy. You get to point at me and say, look, I know you didn't want to do this EDR thing. You never wanted to do it, but now if you can't do it, you can't have cyber insurance. So you've now got a risk management issue, Mr. Client. You got to do it. And I'll give you one more carrot than stick. I use this every time. We talk to a really big car dealership, 250 million in revenue, all that good stuff. The client was paying about 30,000 for a policy. We found one for 15 because we have access to 40 carriers. We always find something cheaper, always. But there were two things they weren't doing that they needed to: MFA everywhere. They had some of it rolled out, but not all the way, and managed EDR. The MSP was on the call too. They're like, okay, so managed EDR for the year is going to be about 5,000 for the year. And so the car dealership looked at it and like, wait, so we're saving 15,000. We got to pay 5,000 for EDR. We're still saving 10,000.
And you get a better policy.
Done. Yeah. Right. And so when that happened, the MSP messaged us the next day and they're like, I get it. Now I know why this is awesome. Right. I get to come in and be the hero that saves the day. That's what we do.
And the other advantage to this really is you get to sit down with your customer and say, I'm required to do the same things you are, right? I have to have MFA everywhere. And my insurance carrier requires that all my customers have it too, right? Somebody who won't meet those basic 5 requirements
Bingo.
Probably is a bad customer for you, right? And if you're at a stage in your MSP where all money's good money and you need it, I understand that, right? We all started there. As your MSP matures, like, draw yourself some minimum standards. Take them from insurance, because they're taking this literally from what's most likely to get you breached. Nobody's going to be more analytical about what keeps somebody from getting breached than the guy who has to write a check every time it happens. So if you want to take on the customers who will follow the right best practices, learn where to set your floor, start with watching what your insurance carriers are doing. I think there's just a lot of knowledge there simply because they take such a mathematical approach to it. Well, I'll let you wrap us up.
I feel like I don't need to say anything. I think Wes kept it simple. I'm not going to add to it because you guys have been insuranced out. But I'm kind of the one of the faces, the account execs. So I mean, if you're interested in talking with us more, I could, talk to me, talk to Wes. We can help you have those conversations. And like you said, we'll just get in front of the client and we'll evaluate their policies. We lead with education. So that's where we start. So yeah.
I'm so grateful to have you guys come out today. It was fantastic. I hope everybody got your questions answered. If you didn't, we've plastered their contact info in here a couple of times. Again, just great human beings. They'll answer your questions. They'll take care of you. They're easy and approachable. You can have a conversation with these fellas. So if there's something you weren't comfortable asking in a group setting today, reach out to those guys, continue the conversation. And I will not be here next week. So Marnie will be back next week to give you guys some more insights. She'll send out the Monday email and tell you what she's going to talk about, because I don't know, but I will be in Florida. So with that, nice to see everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Have a great Friday.
Thanks.
And if you missed any of this, the recording will be in your Monday email from Marnie.